Greetings, fellow tarot travelers. Tripping through the tetrahedral triptych of cards I shall now lay before you. I'm Tarot Torch, and now we're going to talk about the Red Scarves. Who are the Red Scarves, and what do they represent? Well, due to the Yellow Vest protests, which began in November, where 11 people have died, 1,900 protesters and 1,200 law enforcement officers have been injured. And all of this is according to the Interior Ministry. And 109 protesters have been seriously injured, including 18 people who have become blind in one eye and four people who have lost a hand. Something had to be done, and a counter-demonstration is occurring in Paris. To counter these violent protests, thousands of Red Scarves counter-demonstrated in Paris to protest the Yellow Vests' political platform and their overt violence of this alleged revolution that currently grips France. The Red Scarf-clad group is pro-French Republic and do not want their cities and government ruined by violent thugs that are destroying their public plazas, monuments, and local economies by driving tourists and consumers away from such places as the Champs-Élysées. Will the Red Scarves prove to be a force worthy to battle the Yellow Vests? Is this going to be a conflict of right versus left politics in France? Will France have another revolution or perhaps a civil war? Will Paris become a battleground? Well, these are big questions, and I don't have the answer, and I don't think anyone does. And when we don't have an answer, we turn to the tarot cards. And the cards I've chosen for today are the Arnaud Amphot 1801 edition. And the reason for that is shown on the back. The two of coins is always the card that shows the name of the printer and the company. And here we have the date also, where it says An 10, which means the 10th year. Well, it wasn't the 10th year since Adam and Eve. It was the 10th year of the French Revolution. You see, the French Revolution created its own calendar, wanting to be separate from the Catholic Church and its Gregorian calendar, and it started the years as 1 through, I believe, 12, and these years began with the beginning of the First French Republic, or maybe it was a little earlier with the actual Jacobin Society and the beheadings. In any case, this deck is done in year 10, which means that this particular deck by Yves Renaud is a deck from the actual French Revolution. And this deck is a true Marseille deck from the city of Marseille itself. Many decks are called Marseille decks, but they're not from the city of Marseille. They just put the stamp Marseille so as not to have paid taxes in those days, because cards coming from Marseille were tax-free. And as you'll see, the name Arnaud Amphot is present on this card and on every card. And the word France is also on many of the cards. That is because through the French Revolution, there was a lot of questions about copyrights and who would protect copyrights and intellectual property. And so these cards had to make sure of it by stamping each and every card. So this is the deck I've chosen to use. And I want you to know I'm not on a side. I think if I'm on any side, it's on the side of the French people. I don't like to hear about hands being blown off and people going blind for the sake of a public protest. I agree, drama and theater creates public attention, but we're talking about people who are seriously maimed for life, and that's somehow wrong. And I must say, when I looked at the footage of the Red Scarf protests of this new French group that is battling the Yellow Vests, I have to say they were very peaceful. Unlike the Yellow Vests, they walked peacefully, and when they sang the French national anthem, well, when the Yellow Vests sing it, it's more like a beer drinking tune from a brothel. But when the Red Scarf people sing it, it's more like a church choir with harmonies. very delicate and very beautiful. And so I have to say, as a peace-loving person, the Red Scarves do make a valid point. Why should thuggish, violent behavior try to overthrow an established system of government? This is not going to help the people, and the government they install would only be bad as well. This type of tyranny of the masses is what led to 60 million dead in the Chinese Communist Revolution and 30 million dead in the Russian Communist Revolution. The tyranny of the masses is not a good thing. So let's see what is in store for the Red Scarf Revolution and how it will help. Well, it begins with the card of Judgment. And Judgment is, I've been receiving a lot lately. It's a card that has to do with us knowing what is right. And here you can see the name of Arnaud Amfo, and you can see the name of France, an early form of copywriting this card and its design. And what is going on here is that there's a judgment upon the people of France, a judgment upon the government of France, a judgment upon the yellow vest people, and a judgment upon the citizens of France to rise up and to defend their art, their history, their culture, their language, and their courtesy, their comportement, their ability to be a French person. Certainly, it is not French to throw tantrums in the plaza and destroy everything in sight. Now, France is famous for having had revolutions, and certainly the current government was born of a revolution. But like the American Revolution, you don't stay there in a constant state of revolution. Karl Marx said we should all be in a constant state of revolution. But who wants that? Who wants to constantly be killing people? What a frightening situation that would be. The second card is Le Roi d'Épée, the King of Swords. And once again, you can see the stamps of copyright during the French Revolution. And the King of Swords is the one who will make all the choices and decisions. Ultimately, that's Macron, the President of France. The judgment is at hand, and Macron is the decider at this point. Now, it could be the head of the EU. You know, we don't know who's exactly in the government of the EU. And it could be one of the centralized bankers of the conspiranoia crowd. And it could be the Bourbon family, who are the fallen monarchs of France. But to be honest with you, I think the Roi d'Épée is Macron, and it's whom he listens to, his counsel he receives, and the final decisions he makes. And the final card is Le Chariot, the Chariot. And this is the card of comportment, which I was talking about earlier. The ability to carry yourself with grace, with the swag, as we would call it in the modern terminology, of education, of Frenchness, of civility. And so what we see here is that the King of Swords is looking at the decorum of the people, and judgment is at hand. I'll be honest, I think this Red Scarf movement is a good thing, and I think the Macron agrees it's a good thing. Now, maybe Macron himself is the one who inspired or is conducting the Red Scarf protests, and that's a possibility. But someone has to come out and speak on behalf of polite French educated society. Too many people for too many generations have worked too hard to make Paris the beautiful city it is. It shouldn't be tossed into a trash bin because some people are unhappy now and want to put on a yellow vest and burn cars on the main streets. Judgment is at hand. A decision is being made, and the comportment of the people is being watched. Is France going to fall into a criminalization where the lowest level of society rises to the top? Are we going to see France give itself away to the skinheads, to the Muslim immigrants, and to the extreme right wing that doesn't really have an agenda or a direction? Would its leader truly benefit France more than the EU and Macron? Or is the EU and Macron, with all of its problems, at least trying to progress France in the right direction and trying to inspire prosperity and trying to create laws that will ultimately lead to the betterment of France. The cards seem to think so. The cards seem to support. You know, we have 2 high arcana cards here. To even have 1 means it's a very spiritual reading. To have 2 means, oh my God, the gods and the angels are speaking. And then to have in the center, not just a lower arcana card, but a court card, and not just a court card, but a king. This is a very high reading. Now, it's possible the cards are speaking about the return of the Bourbon family, the fleur-de-lis, and the establishment of a new monarchy. And certainly Nostradamus spoke of this, that eventually France would descend so low that the right wing would make its biggest mistake ever and elect a king of the Bourbon family, perhaps in Orléans, to lead France and to replace Macron. Evidently, according to Nostradamus, it would be after the crowd seizes the presidential palace and finds documents in a desk that shows Macron to be a betrayer of their cause, and the people elect a king. And Nostradamus says this is the biggest failure in the history of France. It's France's biggest mistake of all time. Look, I'm not saying Macron is clean. Politics are not clean. And I'm not saying we should all put our faith in Macron. I don't think there is a single political leader we should believe that way. They're not here to help us as much as to help themselves and to help their constituency or their colleagues and cohorts. But I don't see Macron as being evil and diabolical. And when you have a tyranny of the masses, of the uneducated, and of the brutal people that are burning cars and losing hands and eyes to scream and shout and spray paint buildings, certainly leadership is not a viable thing from that group. So I would say the Red Scarves are a welcomed thing, and the higher arcana, the gods, the angels, and the ancestors of France support them, and so does the government of France. And they should be congratulated for their strength and their courage to speak up on behalf of the goodness of France and not let France descend into just a bottomless pit of endless destruction.